Des commentaires, alors la députée.
The Honourable Member for Berthier-Masquinongé. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank my colleague for introducing this bill and for his speech here today.
Good idea. It's important that we promote awareness. This seems to be more of a celebratory piece of legislation, but I think what we need is something concrete. We know that 12 years ago we had the Pay Equity Task Force that submitted a report. About 12 years ago there was a report from the Standing Committee that asked that we would move forward on proactive pay equity. That was in 2005, Mr. Speaker. So I was wondering if my colleague who has presented this piece of legislation would lobby his government and maybe push for, at the end of 2016, we have pay equity for women in the House of Commons. Legislation put forward, and so we put end to this discrimination for Canadians. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Mississauga Lakeshore.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to my colleague across the way for that very important question.
Pay equity is indeed probably the elephant in the room, in addition to, of course, the issue of violence, gender-based violence. Pay equity, in fact, is as much an economic issue as it is a socio-historical issue. When my colleague says that this bill is celebratory, I'd like to just reposition that, Mr. Speaker. This bill was aimed specifically at being not celebratory but evocative of the concrete challenges that we face today in Canada. So if my colleague takes a look at the preambles, they actually outline in a quite frank language and quite a level of detail all those things that we do need to overcome. So what the bill hopes to do, instead of just being government-centric in terms of the efforts to champion gender equality and pay equity, is to engage civil society. This is not something that government can do alone. There are culture changes that are required, particularly in the corporate sector and in those sectors that are traditionally male-dominated. So we're hoping to get Canadians to our side, and I very much agree with you that, that pay equity is a fundamental issue. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Questions and comments? The